It's Marshall Podcast Solo Edition. We like to call it Curious Jess. Coming in here, every other week, every third week, somewhere in there, and talking about stuff that I'm interested in, that is trending, or that I'm passionate about, or that I'm concerned about. How about those Cowboys? That was fairly unexpected, I think, on Monday Night Football. Got a lot of Cowboys bandwagon jumpers jumping back on board. The Cowboys with a road win in the playoffs, first time in a long time. Their last win, Troy Aikman was quarterback, was at Candlestick Park, San Francisco, against the 49ers, of course, in a muddy game. Cowboys beat the Buccaneers Monday Night Football, put Tom Brady away, and they move on to their next game, which is a road game against the 49ers in San Francisco at new Levi Stadium, and that's going to be a tough one, no doubt about it. Seahawks play a way different brand of football than anybody else in the NFL. They are a ball control team. They run the ball. They've got a stacked backfield led by Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and making big cock Brock Purdy look like a Pro Bowler. Let's talk about that guy for a minute. Sohail, I know you don't like sports, but have you ever heard the term Mr. Irrelevant when it comes to the NFL, the National Football League? You ever heard that term,
no,
Mr.
never.
Irrelevant?
Nope.
Okay, so you're familiar with how they pick players in the NFL? They draft them, right? The best players get picked first. In fact, we've had Reggie McNeil on. He was drafted. We're having Sean Oakman on the show here in a couple of weeks. He was a former projected to be round one, pick one from Baylor, edge rusher, defensive end, Sean Oakman, coming on the Jess Marshall Podcast in a couple of weeks. I'm stoked about that. So what happens is, in the first round of the NFL draft, the team with the worst record from the year before automatically gets the first pick, and then the teams will all jostle for position. They'll trade picks, and usually the Super Bowl winning team gets the last pick in the first draft, and the worst team from the previous season gets the first pick. Well, Brock Purdy, who played at Iowa State for the great Matt Campbell, he's a quarterback, and he was the last pick of the last round in the NFL draft, and they named that pick Mr. Irrelevant, which means obviously not much expected of you, kind of a throwaway pick, usually picks from round about the middle of the third round all the way through the end of the last round. Those players are, if they hit and they're good players, that's a bonus. Most teams don't expect much from those late round picks. Brock Purdy.
So Mr. Irrelevant doesn't mean a bad thing, right?
It doesn't mean bad, but it just means not much is expected of him. And his new nickname, which is apparently not a new nickname, is Big Cock Brock, because he is just tearing it up and looks like a 10-year veteran, making great decisions. And, you know, when you walk, he's a rookie. When you walk on the field and you're looking around at other Pro Bowl grown-ass men, the best at their position, guys like Christian McCaffrey, guys like Deebo Samuel, guys on defense like Joey Bosa, those guys do not want to see fear looking back from them from Mr. Irrelevant, and Brock Purdy showed up on the scene. He popped his collar and he said, let's fucking go. And the 49ers, my Seahawks hung with them last week in round one, but last 20 minutes of that game, last 5 minutes of the third quarter and the entire fourth quarter, the 49ers just laid it on them, and they run that ball control defense. Ball control, if you're not familiar with football, means you are holding the ball on offense longer than the other team. More possessions, more plays, obviously, and longer time. And that means the other team, their defense gets worn down. Their offense is standing on the sidelines getting frustrated watching because there's nothing they can do about it. And the way that San Francisco has been doing that is running the ball. So they run the ball, no pressure on Brock. He's making great throws, though, taking pressure off the running game, keeping the secondary honest, getting Kittle involved, one of the best tight ends in the league. It's going to be a very, very difficult, tall task for the Dallas Cowboys to go on the road to Levi Stadium, which isn't even in San Fran. It's like an hour away from the Bay Area. To go in there and come out of San Fran with a win would be a massive statement for the Dallas Cowboys. I think San Francisco is the best team in the NFC. They're the second seed. Philly finished with the best record. They're the first seed. We're going to see what happens if Dallas wins on the road against the 49ers, which is highly unlikely and would be very impressive. Dallas will host the NFC Championship game here in Dallas at Jerry World over there in Arlington. So, as a guy who's not a Dallas fan but who's lived in Dallas since like 1996, I always want the Cowboys to win unless they're playing my Seahawks.
Fake fan.
Yeah, well, the reason, brother, is because everyone's in a much better mood around here when the Cowboys are winning. It's just weird. I'm not a huge pro football fan. I sound like I know a lot about it just because I have this weird memory. I prefer college football, which is pro football now with the NIL deals and the transfer portal, but we'll talk about that another time. But it's interesting, man. Dallas they're a front-runner town. If the Cowboys are winning, everybody's a Cowboys fan, and if they're losing, man, everybody hates the quarterback. You'll notice that's a pretty common theme. Everybody's been throwing Dak Prescott under the bus for the last few weeks. He hasn't looked great. Obviously had that catastrophic ankle and lower leg injury last year that he came back from. Also, Dak's brother committed suicide this last offseason. His brother lived with him. He's very close with his family. Dak's lost his mother and his brother here in the last few years. Big-time adversity Dak fights through. I like Dak. I think Dak is solid. I think he's a middle-of-the-pack quarterback in the NFL. I think if he makes the right decisions and the Cowboys slow things down and play their own brand of ball control, they need to run the ball. We got Tyron Smith moved out on the right side. Got the new rookie Smith on the left side protecting Dak's blind side, taking over for Tyron over there. And if they can run the ball, and if they limit Zeke's touches to less than 10, and they optimize Pollard's touches, get him 20 or more touches, both in the running game and then in the short passing game, Pollard is an X factor. That gives you a chance to get Lamb involved. Very important over the middle possession receiver Lamb, who's got very strong hands and is a reasonable blocker. I think the Cowboys have a chance. But if they go out there and they try to get cute and they try to pass and they go 3 and out their first 3 possessions against San Francisco, it's going to be a very, very long day for that Dallas defense. And when that Dallas defense can pin their ears back and they can run downhill and rush the quarterback, it's a long day for the Dallas opposition. But that Dallas defense isn't the best up the middle. So if San Francisco is running that ball and they're running it consistently, I think Dallas is in real trouble. They have a chance, but much like TCU against Georgia, they have to come out of the gate punching the 49ers in the mouth from the get-go. They have to be the aggressor, the initiator. They've got to be assertive, or the 49ers are just going to they're going to mop the floor with Dallas. I think it could be close. I think a lot of it does come down to that running game, and we'll see. I mean, Kellen Moore's interviewing for jobs. He interviewed for jobs last offseason as well. Dan Quinn's interviewing for jobs. I don't know who would want to hire Kellen Moore or why, to be honest. I don't see much creativity in this offense or much continuity. If you're running the ball well with Pollard, who gives a damn how much you paid Zeke? Sit Zeke down, feed Pollard, and ride him to some victories. The Cowboys have had good points of the season this year, this 2022-2023 season, but they've also had games in which they have absolutely underperformed, looked completely uninspired, unprepared. And football's a game of inches, but it's also a game that requires emotion and aggression. And if you can't come out of the gate swinging, especially on the road as a heavy underdog, you're gonna get absolutely drilled. Moving on from a little sports, I always like to talk about that sports action. In the rugby world, Eddie Jones,
Keep going, sorry.
In the rugby world, Eddie Jones, who was just fired by England International Rugby, the RFU, that happened about 4 weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago. Eddie Jones coaching. He's an Australian coach. He was coaching England rugby in their build-up to the 2023 World Cup, which is later this year in France. World Cup is just like soccer World Cup. Every 4 years, all the best international teams come together and they play to see who's the best international side. And England fired Eddie Jones. Somewhat controversial decision, but they did what they did. They put Steve Borthwick in there to run England rugby. Australia this week, beginning of this week, fired their coach and hired Eddie Jones as the Australia RFU, the Australia Rugby Football Union Director of Rugby, leading Australia up to the 2023 France World Cup. It's a very interesting decision. I like Eddie Jones. I don't think he was the right choice for USA Rugby, so I'm glad USA Rugby didn't go in that direction. But Eddie is a very, very aggressive, plain-spoken coach. He goes to his old players, tells them what they need to do to lead the team. He goes to good players who might not be as fit as they need to be, and just in very plain, uncertain terms lays it out for them what they need to do to be better. I've always liked playing for rugby coaches who weren't passive-aggressive, who were direct, who told you you've got to hit this, and this metric in order to get on the field. So we'll see what happens. That's an interesting point there. I'm a big rugby guy, as you all know, and this World Cup's going to be very, very interesting, especially with New Zealand down. South Africa always strong. The Welsh are down. The Irish are looking good, but the Irish don't perform well at World Cups for some reason. The English, we'll see what happens. They've got the power, they've got the pace, they've got the finances, but for some reason England hasn't been able to put it together last few World Cups either to get in at least past the quarters into the semis or the finals, so we'll see what happens there. And with that, I'll move on to another discovery I made this week. I am really, really into this new Netflix special that Graham Hancock put out along with assistance from Randall Carlson. It is about ancient civilizations. It's an amazing docu-series. I think it's 7 or 8 episodes on Netflix. Each episode bite-sized, 45-minute to an hour long. And it is next-level fascinating. Ancient civilizations found through LiDAR research. They're finding all kinds of stuff that was built under the Amazon jungle. They're finding that the Amazon was actually, those trees were actually planted by humans and then took off and created this lush, cradle of natural life down there in the Amazon. Talking about pyramids all over the world, talking about the way that the planet used to be put together before the Ice Age, before water levels rose and started to separate off land masses. But man, crazy stuff this week about Graham Hancock. Sohail, will you Google Graham Hancock and see what comes up there? And we'll talk about something that is just crazier. Seems like it gets crazier almost by the week, which is this cancel culture. Graham Hancock is just a journalist, researcher. He's not a scientist. He's the first one to say that to anyone and everyone listening. He is a writer. He's married to an Indian woman. He's very right out there when it comes to his use of plant medicine. He stopped using marijuana a few years ago because he felt like he was becoming dependent on it and using it too much. The guy is right out there. He's a very interesting listen, very interesting follow. His content is fascinating. He's been on the Joe Rogan Experience numerous times, most recently here a month or two ago when the Netflix special came out. And it's just crazy what cancel culture is doing, because the Graham Hancock discoveries, research, opinions that he's put out, especially on this Ancient Civilizations Netflix documentary, call it more of a show. It's documentary format. Man, it is flying in the face of big academia. We talked about big academia last week, how they're trying to cancel Jordan Peterson, told him he needs to go through a re-education program for how he uses social media. Graham is being railroaded left, right, and center, and has been for quite a while. Lots of people, lots of scientists, research scientists, anthropologists, People who have written books about ancient civilizations, timelines, things of that nature, do a lot to discredit Graham, call Graham a kook, call him a wacko. But now he's being called a racist, a white supremacist, which is laughable. He's married to an Indian woman. It's just absolutely crazy what happens when it doesn't really matter anymore what the topic is, but if the opinions spoken run counter to the preeminent narrative, it seems like the people who are pushing the preeminent narrative, maybe they wrote books about the narrative, maybe they have textbooks on it, maybe they teach classes on it, maybe they're an authority based on research they did or haven't done, then it seems like the automatic move by whoever is controlling that narrative. Again, this is not political. This is left, right, center, far right, far left, whatever. Whatever the preeminent, confirmed, acceptable narrative is, if you do anything or say anything counter to that narrative, whether it has to do with COVID, ancient civilizations, trans rights, any of that, the automatic move to discredit you is to call you a racist. And I think that's it's amazing. It would be laughable and humorous if it wasn't so shocking and concerning. And we got into this a little bit last week talking about Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, but it's just crazy, Sohail. I mean, we're talking about ancient civilization research here.
So I, believe it or not, just heard about this when you walked in, so I've been doing as much reading as I could in the past 10 minutes. I am familiar with Graham Hancock from his Rogan appearances and whatnot. What I'm seeing is there's two criticisms, right? There's a criticism that he always has gotten, that he's not a scientist, not an archaeologist, and these are... And this is how I feel about a lot of...
and he's never claimed to be any of that.
A lot of conspiracies that I feel like I want to be true or think they're super intriguing, or anything about aliens or anything that me and you are both fascinated by. We talked about this with the Christmas mushroom thing, right?
Yeah, and the guy who wrote the book after doing the Dead Sea Scroll research,
sure,
wrote the book about his opinion of what the Bible is a set of allegories explaining... some sort of psychedelic discovery by the people who wrote it, right?
So
we've talked about this topic a lot.
There's the criticism that is very valid, that this is not science. Don't take it as science, just like anyone who writes books for a living. They're crafting good story. They're crafting their version of a story. That's one criticism. This white supremacist thing. So just from what I'm seeing, I haven't watched it, but it's seeming like, and I've heard him talk about, I think maybe him about Atlantis and stuff like that. Could you break down? From what I'm getting is he's saying certain narratives that are possible narratives, or he's saying they're true. I'm not sure how he's presenting them, that supplant or go in contrast with
common knowledge, common accepted scientific and academic knowledge.
Sure. Well, there you go. That right there is dangerous, or a problem if presented as a true or scientific narrative. He doesn't do that, right? It says here, it's about conspiracism and the positioning of Hancock as the victim of a conspiracy. The repeated disparaging remarks about archaeologists and other academics in every episode of Ancient Apocalypse is needed to remind the audience that the alternative past being proposed is true, regardless of the lack of conclusive evidence for it. So it's playing a game, but if you're proposing theories that this has happened for a century or more, theories that maybe you're not a white supremacist, but a white supremacist can use these to say, hey, first of all, they can say, hey, there weren't indigenous people here. We actually civilized this place, and then whatever history happened, right? Or have you heard of the theory that a lot of are you familiar with Hotep theory, or, a lot of Hebrew Israelites think that black people were here before
Yes.
they were brought over. We talked about that a little bit.
Yes,
So,
Kanye's been going around doing a lot of talking about that
right.
recently
So
as well.
There's no scientific evidence of that. It is a way to use a historical narrative of, oh, we don't know. There's some evidence that's convincing me of this, so therefore we can use this to further our agenda or political ideology or political goals. In the same way, white supremacists can use certain narratives. I don't know what the specifics are, but I can see the argument for it being, hey, don't present that as fact until we know it's fact. That's how science works. That's how, scientific consensus and even historical, archaeological consensus, social scientific consensus works for a reason. So fake science, fake news is not used to further political agendas. I mean,
sure. No, I get it. Look, if a white supremacist hears a theory about ancient civilizations and is then able to somehow leverage that theory into supporting their own ridiculous opinions about whatever it is that they believe about their race being somehow supreme or pure or untarnished or whatever, that's on them. Some of the conclusions they draw and the jumps they make just in terms of from an intellectual point of view are next level and laughable. What I find to be this common theme right now, though, and it has been for 3 years, really, it's the end of January in 2023. At the end of January of 2020, some really weird stuff started happening. And then February, weirder stuff started happening. And then March, it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And cancel culture began its journey before that with the Me Too movement. I think that was 100% awesome, unless there were false accusations made. That happened. There were people who were falsely accused or people whose indiscretions were taken out of context. There were also a lot of really bad POS people who were canceled, like Harvey Weinstein. What I'm saying is, how in the world are you making the jump if you're an academic or you're a scientist? Remember, a lot of scientists get their funding through grants, through institutions of higher learning, and those grants are paid for a lot of times from private companies, from other countries. China just funded a research grant for some work to be done at University of Pennsylvania.
That's all super fair. You got to be super specific when you're talking about those studies. Are you talking about, because bringing it back to Graham
studies? So
I'm reading a little more about Graham Hancock. Right. It seems like he's mirroring some questionable race science in his narratives in the show, and as you know, race
about
science
like originations, how different
originations, how
right.
Hancock summarized how white and bearded Quetzalcoatl taught Native people knowledge from this lost civilization. It's that whole narrative that people, the ancient
they were brought wisdom by the white people.
Yes,
right.
Yeah,
so, but if you listen to what he says, and if you watch the most recent podcast with Rogan and Randall Carlson, you will hear a rant from Graham Hancock that's about 10 minutes long about how Judeo-Christian missionaries brought disease and oppression and bad things to these indigenous people.
Okay, there you go.
So
that's
to
where
say that he is perpetuating this narrative that it's the white man who came and solved all these problems for all these poor little helpless uneducated
so that's where I think
bullshit.
The conversation becomes difficult to have when it's seen as black and white. The way white supremacy works and its sinister nature, it's sinister by nature because it's narratives. It's not direct, I'm married to an Indian person, and I know that white people did bad things. It's complex. It's how these narratives get sewn into our society that subconsciously promote institutions. I'll say this, I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's no people at a round table saying, okay, we're going to do a racism today, right? It's not.
It certainly seems to be the go-to.
That's
when someone needs to be canceled
because
their ideas are gaining traction.
That is a fault of people who are bringing this up or trying to cancel. Like I said, cancel doesn't exist. I don't believe in that shit unless you're going to jail or you're like Justin Roiland, who like has text messages to minors and stuff. You're not going to be canceled. Even Chris Lee is doing fine. So
he is now, but I mean, we talked about last week, Tate was canceled, deplatformed, demonetized, all of that. Obviously, I think he created escape velocity for himself, so he was able to drive those.
But he, like you said, he still had his own platform. He was still allowed to do that and still made plenty of money. So he wasn't canceled. That made even more fervent supporters.
It did. Same with Jordan Peterson, though.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. This Graham Hancock arguments and information that he's bringing to light start to gain interest and momentum, which to me should be a good thing. If that means more research, better research, more money being committed to LiDAR imaging, why wouldn't everyone be? Why wouldn't the most established authorities in the fields of anthropology and ancient civilization theory or history be all over this? Because they want to know what actually happened. Why wouldn't you want to know? Oh, because you have a published book, and if that published book is proven wrong, then you're going to lose money. It's a follow the money.
Totally agree with that. And I think my attack is not on his supporters or him even. It's a two-sided attack on the people who just cancel on black and white terms instead of having the discussion of how white supremacy works, how it is perpetuated and adopted by people on the internet. These are the more important conversations than the individual who is used to scapegoat the issue, right?
Sure.
If he talks about it in a nuanced way, or even a not nuanced way, we should talk about how he's talking about it. Instead of saying, okay, this guy racist, canceled. That doesn't do anything.
Well, yeah, I have spoken many times on the Jess Marshall podcast when I have guests into the studio about how preachers, doctors, politicians, they all get this pass, right? They can be trusted. They would never do anything wrong. Preachers lost their credibility a long time ago. Politicians have now lost their credibility completely. And a lot of Western medical personnel are starting to lose their credibility hand over fist as well, because no one's just taking what they say as scripture anymore. A lot of people are going, I don't know if I like how that sounds. I'm going to go do my own research. Now, if you've got other people like Graham Hancock bringing things up, look, if what he's saying is so far out there and completely unprovable, and you're telling me that LiDAR imaging doesn't show pyramids built below the Amazon rainforest, and that all of those images are wrong, that was all fabricated, okay, I want to see the evidence of that. But if you've got a guy who's out there on his own dime, now, yeah, he gets financing. He got the Netflix documentary made. That's going to keep him going on his research. I don't understand why there's such this snap to judgment in the world of academia, where Sohail, you grew up in a different age than I did, but in college, if you're in a philosophy class, your professor, or a writing class, or even a advanced calculus class, or a business theory or statistics class, your professor was not to be questioned. Often, I had professors who wrote the textbooks we were learning from. The classroom was not the place to challenge the facts, the research, the work that had been done to put together the textbook from which you were learning everything you were supposed to know about the subject that the class covered. And I think that a lot of people are now finding that a lot of what happens in these institutions of higher learning and in our government school systems, K through 12, it's done for a reason. So you said about 2-3 minutes ago, you don't think they're sitting around a table going, okay, we're going to go racism on this. And I don't know, man. I mean, the speed
No.
with which the racism stuff picks up
I meant in the other way.
crazy.
There's no racist people or people being called racist by the professors sitting at a table going, we're going to do a racism, or they're going to wake up that morning.
I misunderstood you.
Because they're definitely like Nazis and like racists that are like, I'm going to do a racism today. But
You bet.
But
Do a
not
racism.
these people, not Graham Hancock. He's not waking up
Right.
and saying that, right?
Yes.
That was my point, is that's the fault of the professors or the people on the left or whoever is canceling these people, of simplifying things to an extent where it does a disservice to the actual discussion of white supremacy, of progress.
Yeah, when you label someone who has nothing to do with it
Because
just to discredit them because you don't like what they're saying, because
Or
it runs in
even
direct.
if I've been at fault of this a lot before I learned how to communicate with people when I moved back to Dallas, because I was in Austin. We were all on the same page talking about this, but even my language, like maybe I can make that leap and understand that, okay, there is racism going on here. Here's an allegory. I got into a big fight with a family friend when I was having a conversation. They brought up reverse racism, this concept that name's hilarious, but the concept that there's racism against white people. And to my understanding, and to a lot of people who have academic race theory in their vocabulary, racism versus prejudice. Racism is a systemic implementation of prejudice, or a systemic issue. So that birth, you can't be racist towards white people, or white supremacy is the underlying systemic guiding force, not black supremacy in the country. So I made this thing that I said this thing I love to say, that I hate white people, not white person, because whiteness is a construct. Whiteness is ever changing. In my brain, I knew all these things, that I thought everyone knew these things. Whiteness was a ever-changing. 100 years ago, an Italian person wasn't white, an Irish person wasn't white. It's an in-group that's established, that's ever evolving, ever getting smaller, bigger, including some people not. So that whole nuanced conversation about race, I distilled down to a talking point that I kind of knew would get a rouse out of someone. I like
Which
having
was
those
what again?
conversations.
I hate
white people, not white person, right? Because white person can be a thing. White people doesn't exist.
You don't like the term
Naturally.
white people.
I mean, it's not a thing. Race is definitely a construct. Whiteness is a straight up construct. Ask one person what whiteness is, it's totally different. A Nazi is not going to think a Jew is white.
Right.
So,
Right.
but you ask a Indian person who's never met a Jew, that's a white person.
Well, yeah, and according to demography, if you go fill out an application anywhere, right, you want to rent an apartment or buy a car, they're going to ask you several questions. What race are you? Right? Have you done one of those recently?
I mean, all the time.
I
There's
filled
no
one out
box.
the other day.
Only recently I've seen boxes for Asian, Indian. Like,
Agree.
It
I
was
thought
just
of you the other
Asian.
day because
I'm
it
like,
said Caucasian, African American, Hispanic, non-Hispanic. And I was like, okay, what's that? That's everything not on that list? Oh, you know what it was? I was donating blood. Yep, I'm going to virtue signal the fuck out of it. I was helping out my fellow man. So my blood is in high demand, Carter tells me. They want me in there all the time.
whoever gets that blood is going to be tripping for a week.
Carter, man, they text me more than they text me more than they text me a lot.
Are you on the bone marrow list?
I guess it's that. I also had the antibodies, so they were just all over me. It's crazy. The phlebotomist says that they've never seen anybody give the whole blood donation as fast as me. I think that's a compliment. So they tap into this big ass oak tree.
Think you might have blood pressure issues.
No, my blood pressure is money, bro. I've been working on that for a minute.
That's good.
My resting heart rate.
Well, we have blood pressure monitors. Should we bring one?
No, I don't want to do. You guys do weekly blood pressure checkups at Harper Belmont.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that violates my HIPAA standards. That should only be info that I'm privy to. But anyways, yeah.
The whole race thing. The whole reason I brought that anecdote up is because
that's a hell of an anecdote. I can imagine that the other person on the other side of the argument was didn't hear the entire thing you said, heard the first part of that sentence and flipped out.
For sure. And I get it. I don't do that anymore because it's not productive. But that's what I'm saying is happening in discourse,
so
in
you're
current
saying
discourse
Austin,
on Twitter.
Austin's different from the rest of the state?
Well, I mean, I would say
you're not breaking any news there, brother.
I would say we were ahead of all this in university,
Well, look, what bothers me, and I've told you this before, the way that things have to be said now, the semantics part of what we're talking about. First of all, it trips people up so much. What do we call that now? It triggers the F-bomb out of people when they hear something said a certain way.
And the other way around, when people who like to call out those people getting triggered hear it that way, they get triggered.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
like, why do you got to say a person who menstruates? Like, dude, chill out.
Well,
who gives a shit?
I think that a lot of what happens now, there is this jump to discredit people with a different opinion, which really...
Jess, your point right there was exactly the problem with all of this. It's all about aesthetics.
Right.
Everyone's debating aesthetics.
Right.
Instead of debating the actual big picture systemic problems. We're all on the same side. We're all being fucked by corporations. Let's talk about we're all being fucked by white supremacy,
Right.
even poor white people or regular white people. It's not
but the focus these days is what it looks like and what it sounds
that's
like.
because I mean Twitter, you don't get that many words, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
But I think it's also a result of people like me and like millennials who came before me who kind of paved the way for online and in-person discourse that was really only happening in academic circles or in social science circles.
So you're calling yourselves pioneers then?
For sure, but I don't think the most vocal people did it in an aesthetic way. They did it in an in-group, out-group way. They did it in a non-good faith way a lot of the times. You know, I was telling you that era with Eric Weinstein and the culture war began 2015, 16, whatever.
Eric and Brett. Yeah.
And Brett.
The Weinstein boys.
Mm-hmm. There's
who
one
want
more,
nothing
right?
to do. Yeah, they want nothing to do with the big bad Harvey
but
Weinstein.
When we went out into the world, instead of being versed on theory, being versed on educating, even if we're versed on theory, there's this whole notion that it's my emotional labor for me to explain race theory to you or gender theory to you.
Sure.
So
and I don't
so
know,
I'm not going
like
to do that. So you go Google it. Well
look,
I agree. There are people who have spent their whole life having to defend their blackness or their queerness or whatever. I'm not one of those people.
Like Rachel Dolezal.
Oh, especially Rachel. She's our queen.
So, the thing is, I think for people who are not immersed in academia, who are years removed from college, who are just living their lives trying to put food on the table for their kids, they don't know how to talk anymore, so it's correct, so it's acceptable. Like, what are we supposed to do here? Can we look at a conversation with another person who has a different point of view than we do, they have a different opinion? And can we say, I'm going to be cooperative and collaborative here? Or what I see a lot of is this gotcha game where I'm going to give you enough rope. You're going to hang yourself with it. I'm going to go, caught you. You said it wrong.
It's all stupid. Everyone does that. It's not just, the Ben Shapiro's do it. The Crowders do it.
This is my problem with
does that.
Yeah, this is my problem with the online politics and culture debates.
And you know what incentivizes it, right? Is those retweets and those views and those ad dollars.
Oh,
so,
look at my Instagram post. I'm gonna make you mad with it. Now tap here to buy a T-shirt that says F Biden, or tap here to buy a T-shirt that says, you know, Trump's a crook. It's a follow the money thing. And the problem with the way we communicate now.
What's hilarious is, you know, Enrique Tarrio, the Proud Boys guy.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay. So he admits he sells Trump shirts and sells Biden shirts.
Right.
Like he sells both.
He's just
perfect.
A businessman.
It's a perfect grift.
He's not a businessman. He's a business man. Yeah, you know, it's crazy.
I agree. I think the discourse makes everyone mad. It makes me mad. It makes you mad. And to take a step back and have good faith in these conversations to an extent. There are people I will not give that kindness that you're talking about to, which would be well deserved in my opinion.
Well, you know, this is one of the reasons that I started the podcast with guests. First of all, it was a middle finger to the powers that be with the 6-foot rule and the and everything they were saying about staying out of the sun, staying inside, not getting around people because they might get you sick or you might get them sick. That was number one. But number two, it is very rare that people with diverging opinions can get together and have a civil discourse.
Agreed.
Where there is no phone, no dog, no TV, no significant other, no dinner, no nothing. Sit down at the table of truth, talk it out, listen to each other like adults. Try to see it from the other person's point of view. If you go away from the conversation and you've approached the conversation with a cooperative, collaborative mindset, I think you might go away from the conversation thinking, that's interesting. I'm going to keep thinking about that. And I would hope that your conclusion doesn't get drawn quickly of, nope, I'm right, that person's wrong, never going to think about this again. Now, everyone's a little bit different. But when you're arguing with someone online, that argument doesn't happen in real time. There will be an inflammatory comment made, and then you will see the comments blow up in, you know, we all do, right?
I think a common thing we fall into the trap of, too, is when we're talking to that person, when we get there, we fall into the trap of putting them in the box that, oh, I've heard this before. I know what's going on.
What you're about to say.
Instead of I do that, I to this day, I catch myself sitting in here being like, wait, hold on. You have to see this. Every person has a unique viewpoint, but the echo chambers online kind of make it hard because when you talk to these people in real life, which I do all the time, Jess, I go to Union Bear in Frisco, and every time someone starts talking to me about some bullshit that it's the same conversation every time, same talking points, same things you see online, straight. The same things you see. They're just parroting their favorite pundit.
Sure.
Right? But if you can get deeper, you can see where that's coming from and deconstruct and get past the aesthetics.
Well, right? Let's talk about toxic masculinity. So we had Brandon Brown on, migraine expert here in Richardson, Texas. If you guys struggle with migraines, get with Brandon Brown. He's got an awesome approach to solving migraines. Great guest, gonna have him back on, and he talks about what toxic masculinity means to him. We had Guy Mesger on, UFC OG, MMA guy, MMA coach now. We talked to him about what's it mean to be a man in 2023, right? So, like, even the opinions of what that
and
term,
they had amazing the deconstructions of what they said is exactly what I agree with, and it is what
Morris Brissett,
and it is what toxic masculinity is to us, but it is what it is. Like, that's the same thing.
Well, we see the people who are commonly called toxic masculine. This is a toxic male, this person. So then what ends up happening is that person gets set up as this symbol of toxic masculinity. Whatever the fuck that means to you is up to you. But what do? Do they hit the gym? Do they hunt? Are they what's up? Do they have a beard? Do they have tattoos?
What's interesting is, like, it maybe a few times, especially in 2015, 16, but I don't see that. Like, maybe I'm not seeing the right things online. I don't see people call out people for being healthy, going to the gym, hunting unless they're vegans or something.
I'm
like
saying
that.
that's an upshot,
I
right?
don't-
So this
I don't
person
see any
is
of that. Whenever I see discourse about toxic masculinity, it is about the things we talked about with Brandon. It's about the things we talked about with Mo.
So you see the discussion of the theory of toxic masculinity. You don't see actual tangible people being called a toxic.
If I
male.
do, I know it's just like people on the right saying things about the left, and it goes right over. I'm like, okay, like sure, there's always going to be people who are not in it for good faith or just in it for the game. That's so.
When you talk about good
insignificant.
faith, you're talking about stick to the argument and don't bend the argument to meet the trending topic. I think that's what you mean by good faith. I'm
That's
very
part of
familiar
it,
with the
yeah.
term. Insurance carriers act in bad faith all the time on property insurance claims. If you have a property insurance claim and your insurance company told you that it was not going to cost what it does cost to fix it, you should reach out to me and I can help you with that. I do that every day at Autograph Construction. When you talk about arguing in good faith, right? Having a collaborative conversation, a cooperative conversation where we're not shouting each other down. No one's getting personal. We're actually trying to see the other side of it. I think that is lost on so many people. So many people get so passionate about. I love passion.
Good faith is as simple as, is the person you're listening to, do they have a monetary incentive to, make you feel a certain way or produce the content they're producing in their $100,000 studio? Do they have any other personal gains to get from holding this position, arguing this position, not budging, right? It's all these Andrew Tate people defending him. I just saw Brendan Schwab and the other freaking Brian Callen, right?
Brian Callen
on their
and
thing,
Brendan Schaub,
just like, oh, you and the Nelk boys, all of these manosphere people, they're like, oh, you can't know. We don't know. You can never know, right? Same thing we talked about. They can't budge on that. It's not good faith because...
Well, I think most of those guys in the manosphere, most of their arguments have to do with the deplatforming and demonetization. Because
I'm talking about since he's been arrested. I'm not talking
about...
Well,
can we know anything until anything's proven in court?
Well,
because I know you and I talked about this last week,
There's
too.
plenty out there that you have to acknowledge, at least, of his videos of him describing what he's doing, of him admitting to the things he's being charged with.
It just seems so unwise to put a target on yourself if you are really running prostitution rings and you are really dealing in human trafficking.
One of his main points was, hey, I moved to Romania because I can pay off the authorities. Well, that
obviously not.
Yeah, so he did.
Now he's in a hospital.
He did until he couldn't, right?
Well, now he's in a Romanian hospital.
Yeah. He couldn't handle it, but he did pay them off until he couldn't, until it got big enough to where he couldn't. But my whole point with those guys is there's a part of it that they really don't want to believe it, or really don't. Maybe they do have a healthy skepticism, but there's also a part of it that I don't think is deniable, that they know that their little manosphere fans are going to attack them. Like the moment Bradley Martin, Bradley Martin, he just questioned to the Nelk boys, hey, do you know these videos exist of Andrew Tate? And the moment he did that, his fans blasted him, turned on him. So, they know how it goes with these.
I think as we talk about the narrative, I want to talk about the food narrative before I have to wrap this solo pod up a little bit. Did you see the food pyramid post that states that Fruit Loops are healthier than red meat?
I think it was Lucky Charms, right?
You might be right. They're magically delicious. So we all know that we all know about the food pyramid, right? You've got things you actually shouldn't eat are on the food pyramid is what you should eat the most, and things that you should eat are at the top of the pyramid, and they're the things that you should eat the least according to the food pyramid. And the food pyramid, if you do research on this is not a conspiracy theory. I may misstate the exact way this happened, but the food pyramid, essentially, the Cliff Notes version is the food pyramid was put out by Big Food. Big Food, who wants everybody eating their sugar and their processed food because that's where they make money. They mark up your Lucky Charms. It's hard to mark up eggs. It's hard to mark up meats. It's hard to mark up milk, fresh things. The markup on processed foods, on simple carbs, refined sugars, that's where they make a lot of their money. And then that ties you in. If we can get you hooked on this junk food, we're actually going to end up getting you sick, and then we're going to just hand you right off to our sister company over here. They're going to have a pill that can help you with that blood pressure, obesity, eczema, emphysema, psoriasis, diabetes, whatever it is that you probably brought on yourself because you were shopping up the center of the grocery store instead of around the sides. It's insane, man. And to go along with that, the use of seed oils. So when's the last time you ordered food? You went to a restaurant or ordered food from like DoorDash, Sohill?
The weekend.
You probably ordered something very healthy. I always try to at least keep it somewhat between the ditches if I have to order out or go out.
Trying to remember, I had sushi a few times.
There you go.
I ate too much sushi. But
Sushi's awesome if you can go with the sashimi route with no white rice.
Poisoning.
Yeah.
You know, I want to real quick while we're wrapping this up. We talk about I'm just frustrated with how confusing the damn food conversation is. You say white rice is bad. We've been told brown rice is great, fiber, or not great, better because of fiber and all this. Then I just saw something about how white rice is actually better. There's a reason Asian cultures have removed the hull and the bran for centuries. I hear the same thing about seed oils. There's this whole thing in the past few months, super trendy, to talk about seed oils and how evil they are and how bad they are.
Paul Saladino, man, he talks about it almost every day on his Instagram.
When I see other people criticizing those criticisms and saying there's not obviously certain saturated fats and certain fats in general are better than others, and you don't want just straight up saturated fats. But the demonization of certain seed oils that provide, that are cheap and accessible to people. That's a whole conversation about nutrition, what's healthy and what's accessible to people, and why it's shaped like that. But it's just like, where can we get some science, some real, unadulterated, unfunded by General Mills?
I think that's research you have to do yourself. I think you have to use
we literally cannot. That's not. I
think you have to use your body as your test subject.
Why? I mean, why do we have to do that?
Well, so if you got irrefutable science about nutrition, right? It doesn't mean that whatever that irrefutable science about a nutrition or a diet plan or
for sure, we talk about this all the time. Yeah. Everyone's different. I'm different. You're different.
I think that if
some people 5 meals a day, some people are runners. Some people.
Look, if you look back at what we ate 30 years ago and you compare it to what we ate now, and you look at what they cooked protein in 30 years ago and what they cook it in now, and then you look at our obesity rates. I mean, it's very easy. That's everybody.
Yeah, but the people who are alive now ate food 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Are you talking about childhood obesity rates? Because they were high 30 years ago, too.
Well, I mean, childhood obesity rates have a lot to do with the proliferation of the processed food.
The way y'all ate, and even I ate in the late 90s growing up, is so much. There's so much more information out there and accessibility to being healthier and more nutritious than in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, the data availability, that's something I think social media is awesome about. Yes.
My mom grew up here in the 70s. Like, they ate like nacho cheese from the can, and like that was all like common American. It was all processed, at least I guess what I'm saying is at least now there's a focus on food culture, eating, cooking,
trying to eat whole foods, fresh,
and cooking your own meals,
right? And
the virtue in that, versus what was super perpetuated by the food industry in the late 20th century.
I mean, I think now that info is so much more readily available because of social media. That's one of the really bright spots of social media, in my opinion. You can follow somebody like Lane Norton, or you can follow someone who's a complete charlatan, like the Liver Princess, right? You can follow people.
The Food Network had a big hand in that.
In making food, in making the king of liver who he was, what he was?
No, but
in outing him?
No, in contemporary, sorry, not about Liver Princess, Liver King, but about making contemporary Americans more conscious about what they're eating.
I didn't
about
know
cooking.
that the Food Network.
Yeah, when the Food Network came out, people started cooking a lot more. People started thinking about what they were eating. That's the rise of food, our current day food culture, which is thriving.
Interesting. That's very interesting. If you do go out and you do want to avoid seed oils, which even if you go to a nice high-end steakhouse, a lot of times they're gonna prepare your protein, whether it's fish, a steak, chicken, whatever.
That's crazy to cook a steak in canola. Why would you not just
some sort of seed oil? You can ask them. They'll say, "Oh, it's sesame oil, grapeseed oil, whatever." You can tell them this is an order hack for y'all. Just tell them I'm allergic to oils, and I'd like you to cook my steak, chicken, salmon in butter or ghee. Please.
I need you to send me your info on these seed oils because I've been researching
about what's wrong with them.
Yep.
I will. I can.
I
Max
put that
Lugavere is your guy who you should follow about that on Instagram.
I want people to be able to see this because we give all this nutrition advice in all these podcasts.
Yep.
And it's like sesame oil is amazing. I'm not going to live without sesame oil, dude. You put some drops of that on some vanilla ice cream, it's a game changer.
Weird. Sesame oil on vanilla ice cream.
And you would never cook a steak in sesame oil because it can't handle high temperatures. But
yeah.
Cooking a steak in anything but its own fat makes no sense.
That or some bacon grease or something like that. I agree with you. I cook my steaks either
your steak, if you're getting a good steak
or its own,
you're getting a good ribeye.
If it's a fillet, it probably doesn't have much.
Don't eat a
fat.
fillet. Who's eating a fillet? That's
some people do.
Whack.
I had Wagyu on Friday night.
That's literally all fat. You don't need to put oil in there.
But I was underwhelmed. It's my first Wagyu.
It was probably fake. Where were you?
I was at a nice spot in Plano, but we are running out of time, and I want to get to one last little biohack attempt that I'm making. I'm trying this thing. It's called a salt retreat, and what I've got are years and years of broken noses and impacts to my eyes and noses from playing sports and fighting have given me breathing issues. And I have to use a nose spray also because I have bad seasonal allergies. Found out about this salt retreat. So what you do, you sit in this room. They take pink Himalayan sea salt. They pulverize it into dust. And then they blow it in this room. You sit in there for 40 minutes and you deep breathe. And I'll let you guys know what I think. I'm 4 or 5 sessions in. I bought a 10 session program. I am noticing that I don't need my allergy nose spray as much during the day, and I feel like I'm getting better sleep. It is also supposed to help with skin issues, like I mentioned earlier, eczema, psoriasis, etc. So if you can find one of these salt retreat spots around town, around you, they're popping up all over the Metroplex. They're great. I highly recommend giving it a shot, especially if you struggle with allergies or you've got chest congestion. Now, if you go and you have a cough, man, bring some cough drops. I was in there the other day, sitting next to 2 ladies. You're in a room with 3 other people. You're in a recliner. They have a privacy screen between you. And these gals, bro, were coughing like they were married to the Marlboro Man.
I mean, they're breathing in salt. Dude.
Yeah, but I'm breathing in salt, and I'm doing breath of fire. Breath work beats breathing stuff while I'm in there, so I can like multitask. You are not naked, so you are fully clothed.
Is it hot in there?
It's 68 to 69 degrees, nice and
comfortable. So for you, hot.
That is hot. Do we even have the AC on yet?
No, I forgot about it. I'm sweating.
It's a warm one up in this bitch. Anyways, I'm not ready to completely 100% endorse the salt breathing and salt room therapy, but I will say that I have started to notice some positive effects from it. And I always tell you guys, whenever I'm going to try any new biohacking, health, fitness, wellness product, there you go. There's an example. There is a very interesting business model as well. Massage chair? That is not a massage chair. There is a heating function on the chair if you get cold. So that's not me. I bring my own fan to blow on me since I get so hot all the time. But it's interesting approach. It's an interesting business. Try it out. You guys, thank you for joining me for Curious Jess. hit you guys next week with some more things, trending topics. If you guys want me to talk about something that's got you pissed off, interested, confused, hit me up. Hit me anytime on Instagram at Jess from the Northwest. Y'all live a DIY life. Y'all autograph your life. You only get one. There's a better life out there waiting. We just got to go grab it, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Hey, what's up? Thanks for checking out my videos here on the Jess Marshall YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe for sure. Hit that bell. Press that button to watch the next video. If you got a question you have about any of the topics I bring up in the videos, drop a question below, and we'll be sure to get an answer back to you ASAP. See you on the next one.